Hey there, welcome to the table. So we're going to get ready to start Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea. ACIS is a very nice acronym for it. This game, like I said, it's a pretty light game, but the sheer number of scenarios and possibilities is quite impressive. It's very overwhelming, actually, in fact, to figure out what to do first. So in the last video, I explained that we could do, for example, they have a basic setup in the regular rule book. This is like a basic 6-player setup. The playbook itself has the Fall of Rome 2, which it recommends as your first solitaire scenario. But it's a very specific scenario, so you don't have a lot of control over the setup. But I wanted to point out that on page 20, I believe, is when the solitaire rules are first starting to be discussed. There is a sandbox mode on page 8. I know I'm bouncing around through a lot of pages here, but it tells you that if you want a more open-ended game and possibly a peaceful game, because you could play this game peacefully or war-like, we can go to page 8, and on page 8 is basically a solitaire, well, it's for solitaire or multiplayer. Here, let me put the camera down and get to the page for you. Okay, so this is a scenario where it's a sandbox, and you use the full map, and every civilization begins with 12 discs, and then here you pick any 2 of these, any 2 of those, and then any one, Egypt, plus any one of those. So Egypt is, I guess, always in the game. Anyways, long story short of that is we can, whoa, sorry, didn't mean for that to happen. We could have basically anything we want. So which one do we do first? I probably spent more time worrying about that than I did about the rules. And then at the very end, I wanted to also point this out. They have actually an ability for you to design your own scenario. So they actually have rules for how to make your own scenario. And then they even have rules on how to create your own civilization. So if you want, to make another civilization, for example, I maybe want to make Israel, right? It actually has rules for how to do that. And then I can add Israel to the game. Then I believe it also has how to make your own scenario. I think that's right before this. And so, yeah, we can create our own. So I can, have Darius, he released the Jews to go back to Israel. That was a big thing for Darius to do. He's even quoted many times. And in fact, they had his name written in a book over like 300 years before he was even born, Darius. So it's one of those things that people try to write off, but it's pretty impressive for people with sticks. Or at least that's how they're described. But anyways, yeah, I mean, you can make yourself a nice little scenario about how, they were released by the Persians, but then, Egypt didn't like it and tried to declare war, just like what happened in real life. But so you got here how to make your own scenario. So anyways, I'm not doing that. That sounds like a lot of work, especially when you're trying to just learn a game. And I went back and forth, do we just do a sandbox? Controlling 6 civilizations, where I'm only going to control 1 and the other 5 are AI. I think it's doable, but I also think it's a lot of work. You're going to be doing a lot of crunching and decision making, because the AI charts for these are very flexible. And so because they're flexible, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions. It's not as simple as a flowchart in this game. It does have like priorities that it gives you, but then you have to figure out what those priorities mean. So I think this game would really bog down if I'm recording, and it would bog down because it's our first time if I try to do 6-player map. So I ruled that out. So then it was like, okay, what do I do? A 2-player, a 3-player, what should I do? The next thing is if I do a sandbox game, you don't have to attack the other player. You can try to play peacefully. And the NPC would also play peacefully. He's not going to try to attack you unless you do certain things to encroach in his area. And so then I was like, well, that might be a really boring game to record. So I thought about it a lot, and we're going to do the Roman one. Now, the one thing I will tell you with this Roman one is you don't get to pick who you are. You're Rome. And the scenario is very specific. And the rules do get changed. Like, for example, there's no wonders in this game. And wonders are a very important part of the game. So if you're trying to see, like, okay, how does this, work with wonders, you have to discard 5 resources to build a wonder. And 5 resources is either discs on the board or cards in your hand or talents. These are completely out of this scenario. So that's the drawback of playing a scenario, is you're not going to see the rules as they're written for a regular game. I went back and forth a lot on this, but I think I'm going to do this scenario largely because it's very scripted in the beginning, which will help us because we're new to the game. The territories are already every territory is already claimed, which is also helpful. And the AI is very deliberate in this one. They want to kill us. And so we are on the defensive. And because they want to kill us, I think it's going to make the AI decisions a little easier. Because, okay, so now let me stop here. Before we dive into this scenario, let's say we're not in a scenario. Let's say we're playing a sandbox game or, one of these basic setup games. The way the AI works is the barbarians are always their enemy. So that's not an issue. They will fight barbarians all the time. They will fight you if you start to encroach on their territory, and they have conditions to describe what that means. So you would have to be deliberately provoking them for them to want you to be their enemy. But then they also have like some checks, like if you're winning in the victory points section, they may make you their enemy because they're not going to just sit back and let you win, right? So in other words, it's doing what an AI should do, is not let you win. But with that being said, it can be a peaceful AI, which is just then, because you score points for having cities in this game. You don't have to conquer other people to score points. You can score points by just having a lot of cities. So the AI can move that direction. And so it's very fluid. And like I said, it's almost like it's got so much Gumby style flexibility that when you're playing your first game, like I'm about to do, when I was reading it, I was like, well, Jesus, what do I do when the AI takes their turn? I mean, it's a little, so when you're doing a sandbox, I think you want to have in your mind some narrative, right? So for example, and I, bring up my 18xx game, I actually played Schizophrenic, where I played all sides, and I actually created, a Russian character. I think it was Tchaikovsky or something like that. I don't think that's who exactly it was. But then I had, I had a French character. I had de Gaulle. I had, gosh, I'm drawing blanks. But I had characters that sort of had a personality, right? And we gave them like a priority. And then once they had that priority, they played very well within their means. And like, for example, the Russian player was really focused on developing Russia. And de Gaulle was really focused on getting an OE run in really quick. And then there was a British player who took pride in having the best trains in the game. And anyways, I think you want to do that with this game. You're going to want, even if it's just an NPC that has its own AI, you're going to want it to have its own little narrative. You're going to want to maybe create some kind of story behind it. This game is going to be, I've not played it yet, so I don't want to get too judgmental, but I think this game will be boring if you just look at it as discs. And that's the purple discs, and these are the red discs, and those are the blue discs. I think it would get boring quick. I think it's more interesting if you truly have a historical narrative you're trying to tie to it. Like this was your long lost, brother and was upset that you became king, and he decided to form his own empire to take you down. I mean, that makes this so much more interesting, because now it's not just discs. So it's for that reason that I selected the scenario, because the designers already sort of did that for you. So in this scenario, the Roman Empire is broken up into two parts. There's the Western and the Eastern. The Eastern is red, the Western is purple, and we control both. Those are us. We play as the Roman Empire. Now, I can choose to do the full map, where I play both sides, or I can choose to just use the Western map and only play as purple, or I can choose to play as only the Eastern map and only play as red. That is a choice, and those are the three variants to this game. The thing is if I only play the West, then there's only going to be the Visigoths and the Persians. And if there's Visigoths and the Persians if you play the whole thing. And if I only play the West, it's only going to have Visigoths. If I only play the East, it only has Persians. So you're cutting the number of things you're controlling in half and the number of AI in half as well. So you can make it a smaller game. It is the big thing. And then this has a variant where you can add the Huns. And I'm just going to throw that in at the very end here. You can add the Huns to the game, but that's an option. And they put in the notes that this is only for a real test of your fortitude. So I guess the Huns are pretty badass. They definitely ruined Rome's day back in the... Okay, so the other thing with this one is normally you play 1, 2, 3, 4 turns, and then you go to, you go from Epic 1 to Epic 2. So you got this situation where you start here, you play through the turns. Starting on turn 2, there's a variable possibility that it will end. So there's no guarantee you're always going to get 4 turns in, right? After turn 2, you're going to draw a card and check. And depending on what's on the card, you'll either end the epoch, move on, or move to the next turn, okay? That's regular rules. In this game, we're starting on epoch 4, so we don't have 1, 2, and 3, but we're going to do 4 turns. We don't do that check at the end. So this is what I'm getting at, is the rules, there's like base game rules, and then there's the scenario just trump that. So this scenario trumps that, for example. Normally there's a variable thing when deciding whether or not you get to the end of the epic, but here you play 4 turns no matter what, and you're already on the final epic. So your opportunity to, you score points at the end of each one of these. Well, here we're already at the end, and so again, the scenario changes the game. So I know I'm 13 minutes in, and we haven't even started the, get the setup going. And I promised people that playthrough would be on video too. So I'm breaking all kinds of promises here. So my apologies to those that are getting upset. Let's go ahead and get going, and we'll get this set up. I do need more time to do that. So if you're just looking for playthrough, we'll make that video 3. So I'll go ahead and tell folks that now, so you don't waste any more time. But let's set up this Roman scenario. And I think, yeah, I mean, I'll shut up about it, but I'm struggling because this Roman scenario is taking away some of the base game rules. So from an instructional perspective, you're going to see a different game than if you sit down and play it with somebody else. So it's what makes this game neat. The rules are very fluid that way, but there are rules that are different if you're playing a different scenario. So as long as you understand that, then the rest of this is going to fall into place. So let's go ahead and get going. And I'm going to have you guys, I really think it would be beneficial if you guys just experience this along with me. So we're going to do version 1. So that way we can at least play the whole map. And then it says in all 3 variants, the 2 NPC invaders, the Visigoths and Persians, are always an enemy. So remember, the AI could be friendly to you, but in this game, they're always an enemy to you, and you're a primary enemy. That's another concept in this game. They have primary enemies, and then they have regular enemies. You're going to be a primary enemy. They will never make peace with you. So there's no way to make peace with them. And the invaders are never enemies to each other. So they will never attack each other. So we're putting the white cylinder on epoch 4 and another one on turn 1. So we'll just grab this real quick. And so we're playing the 4th epoch, whatever you pronounce that word, and then turn 1. All right, so now it's telling us that for civilization turn order, green is going to go first, and then the Western Empire second, and then I think this is Persia third, and then the Eastern Empire fourth. So this is going to be the Gauls, and they're going to go before. So basically, the Western Empire enemy is going to go before the Western Empire, and then the Eastern Empire enemy is going to go before the Eastern Empire. Okay, so wonders are not used in this scenario. The Western Empire uses the Rome civilization display and purple discs. All right, so when it says display, it's referring to these. And so we have to find Rome. And then we also are going to use Troy. We're actually using 2 of these. So Rome is going to be, obviously, Rome, the Western Empire. And it has some abilities here we'll look at in a second. And then the Eastern Empire is going to play as Troy. And they're going to, as just part of this scenario, they're actually going to have the same abilities that Rome has here, in addition to the abilities that it has there. So the Eastern Empire is going to be a little bit more heavy with the bonus rolls. So here's where it's saying, place a purple disc on the order track, and then 2 purple discs into Dalmatia and 1 into Leptis, presuming an invisible line connecting the 2 areas. So I probably need to start getting stuff off the board here. Let's see, they're in the game, they're in the game. Okay, these are the 4 in the game, but I need to get them off the board. Okay, so now we're a little bit, so the other thing is we do have victory points. So I will check real quick, but I think they may have just 1 score tracker for both of them. And then, so I'll check that real quick, but I know we have 1 score tracker for both the East and the West. They just share 1 score. And I think they do too, but we're gonna find out. Okay, so it's saying Dalmatia gets 2. And where is Dalmatia? This is gonna really screw up my ability to know old world. So here we go. There's 2 there, and 1 in Leptis. So, presuming an invisible line connecting the 2 areas. Where is Leptis? Holy cow, way down here. Okay, so I guess it's trying to tell us that this and that has an invisible line connecting the 2 areas. Then it says place, okay, never mind. This is that pull thing again. So this is the shallow end, that's the deep end. Then what it's saying is that a camp goes into every area west of the line. So what it's saying is after you make this imaginary line in your head, you then just put 1 disc in every single area to the west of that line. So this is the shallow end of the swimming pool. Okay, so just real quick in terms of like, these are what you would call a camp. And you're limited by these discs. So once you run out of discs, you have no choice but to remove discs from the map to place new discs elsewhere. Normally, you have a settlement, which is 2 discs. So that's a settlement, for example, up there. And a settlement will generate new discs every round for you, so that way you can, grow. Now, this is a weird scenario where everything in the scenario, like your empire is already stretching across the entire map. Normally, you don't start controlling this much territory. You're going to have to grow into it. So this is a game where you're trying not to shrink your empire. So where am I going with this? Well, you can start to, this is what we have left as far as discs. I know there's a few more that's going to go on a board, but right now we only have one settlement. And then if you have a city, that's going to be 3. So let me, for purposes of the camera, I'll put them side by side like that. It might be easier to see. And if I ever have 3, it'll be a city. And a city is how you score victory points. And we're talking sandbox game or any other game, including this one. You score victory points with cities. But we're going to read next that this particular scenario, you're going to start with a certain number of cities, and you're not allowed to build any more because the Romans are just unable to. Because there's a temptation, like during your turn, you could just say, okay, I want to pull back discs and then grow, right? And then I'm going to place my discs here, and I'm just going to create like a wall of cities here in Italy. That's what I would do, right? Because that's more valuable to me than owning these piddly islands out here. But this game doesn't quite let you do that. So I'm going to keep reading here. Now we're going to place a second disc to make settlements into Aquitania, Gaul, Liguria, and Umbria. All right, so Liguria, Gaul, they like to roll a lot. Umbria, I know, is here. They make good pizza. And Aquitania there. So you can see we got a wall of camps along the northern edge here. Okay, so now we're going to place 2. We're going to make our cities now. These are going to go into Rome, Gades, and Carthage. So we're going to do 2 in Rome. That makes sense. If we didn't have a city in Rome, that would make no sense. And then Carthage is going to have a city. Also makes sense. And then Gades. Man, I just don't know my ancient territories very well. Where is Gades? It would be where a city should be. Oh, right here. So, in the Spain area. Okay, so I'm jumping ahead here, but 2 yellow discs are going in Rome. So now what are these yellow discs? This represents gold or prosperity, if you want to call it that. I'm making up that word. It's not in the rule book. So again, there's regular rules, and then there's these scenario rules. In the regular rules, these are the areas that are coveted by the NPCs. So the NPCs want to capture areas that have these golden discs. And when they do capture it, they get to sack the city, which allows them to get victory points, again, which of course causes you to lose the game. And they get other stuff too. I think talents, and they get all kinds of cool perks if they can take these. But the thing with the gold is, since they're coveted by you as well. So normally I can play a card like Volcano and then just wipe out, 3 discs from an area, and, too bad, too sad. The discs are destroyed. There's nothing you can do to stop it unless you play a negate card. These gold discs prevent cards from destroying more than 1 disc. So for example, there's 2 gold discs here in Rome, which means that Rome is a super valuable city. And if they were able to sack it, then they could actually sack it twice. That's why it has 2 gold discs there. And then the idea is you're supposed to put your discs on top to show that it's a golden city. Now, normally, like let's say I play a volcano card because I want to just wipe that city out. I can't because, I can play the card, but because it's a gold city, it restricts the most I can never destroy is just 1 disc. And I can never destroy the last disc, okay, through a card play. It's just impossible. Gold discs prevent that from happening. Now, if I'm invading it and I put my own discs in the area, so this is now going to create what's called a contest, right? Or combat, you'll hear me say sometimes. Well, through combat, I can eliminate them completely. That's how I sack the city and get the gold, value. When you sack the city, the gold token is removed from the game, and so forth. Now, that can be done through regular, like I said, in the contest. You can do it there, but even during the contest, it limits the amount of discs that can be removed from contest situations. But with this scenario, I cannot. The NPC is not allowed to play a card to remove any discs at all. These discs are securely intact. They can't be removed from any card play. They can only be removed from contests, direct attack. And even then, they still have protection. So the NPC is going to have a harder time taking these golden areas. And it'll make more sense as we play, but just understand that that's, if you're playing a player versus player game, this concept doesn't exist. In fact, the gold is a player color in a regular game. So it's only in the solitaire games that they use this concept of gold. And it drives the NPC's priorities, right? These gold cities are the priority of the NPCs. So they're going to march towards it. They're going to try to take it. It's their primary objective. Okay, so I think I beat that horse enough. So let's keep going. And by the way, I have a whopping 1 token left. So, and we didn't get to the rules yet, but I'm pretty sure that it told me that the Roman Empire is not allowed to create any more cities. So these 3 cities that are in the game are all they're going to have. And to keep going with the gold concept, Carthage is 1 gold. So we can stack them like so. And then the Spanish one over here, Gades, is also a 1 gold area. And this is just the Western Empire. So now we move to the Eastern Empire, and I don't think I need to worry too much. It's telling me to do the invisible line thing, but to be quite honest, they just go everywhere else. So we're just putting red everywhere else. So yeah, just drop a bunch of tokens and move them around. Like I said, this is everything's a token in this game, so you don't have to worry about cavalry versus something else. It's just lots and lots of tokens. And all right, so the Eastern Empire, like I said, is going to be playing as Troy, but we're not done here. It says, so Macedon is going to have 2. All right, so that's a settlement. And then the Trojan Sea gets 1. And that's something else. The sea zones actually get these tokens normally in a normal game, so it's really weird how Rome doesn't have any in a sea zone. Anyways, there's even a concept of dominating. So if you have the 2 land zones next to a sea zone, you actually get to wipe out any sea zone presence from opposing players. So if you control the land that's next to the sea, you wipe them out of the sea zone. I'm not sure how much of that we're going to see in this scenario because there's not a lot of sea battles going on with this one. But that's something that's very much a part of this game, is you can put and control sea zones just as much as you can control land. The only 2 exceptions are these 2 deep sea zones, which I think you can only put tokens in the 4th epoch, and even then you can only put 1 token. You can never control it. So with that said, there's that element of the game that I don't think you're going to get to see much of in this one. So now we're going to make settlements into a whole bunch of places that I don't know where it is. Thessaly. I think this is Thessaly. Yep. Carchemish. Ooh, Carchemish. Where's X? That's, yep, over here in the corner. Hamath, Palmyra, Canaan, and Petra. Okay, those are all Asia Minor stuff. There's Hamath, Palmyra, Canaan, and Petra. Yep, so they got settlements all along this edge of the map, just like we had settlements all along the Gaul edge. So very interesting, and that's, I think, where we're going to get attacked the most. So then we're going to place 2 additional red discs to make cities in Troy, which is here. Mycenae, here. The Nile Delta, here. Almina and Tyre. So Tyre there, and Almina up here. Okay, so what they're saying is that these 5 cities represent Constantinople. With its mighty walls, Athens, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. That's what these represent. And that makes sense. So there are no red discs on the victory point track or in the ready box of the Trojan civilization display at this time. There's no purple discs on the victory point track or on, okay, so no victory point track discs at all. Not sure why, we'll find out in a second. So now when we get to the gold here, there's one in Troy, and then one's in Carthage. Oh, I'm sorry, we did that one. Mycenae, there's probably one in each city here. The Nile Delta, Tyre, and Almina. So yeah, every city gets one. All right, so now that we got all that done, the Visigoths are the Gaul civilization. So we can, for example, we can grab Gaul out of here, and that represents the Visigoths. And then the Persians are going to use the Mycenae one. So I thought I saw that. Here it is. So they're going to use that one. All right. So these 2 are going to represent the AI NPCs in the game. All right, so they have no home area. The green disc goes into the turn order track, and then they have 0 victory points. Same for the Persians, no home area. They're on turn 3 in the turn order track and 0 victory points. Okay, there's event cards that need to be removed from the Fate deck. Putting card 62, Time Marches On. Remove the 7 event cards from the Fate deck, putting card number 62, Time Marches On, back in the box. It is not used in this scenario. So this is a very thick deck of cards. So finding those are a little bit of a pain in the butt. I can tell you that the event cards are pretty easy to find because it's like this. So it says remove the 7 event cards from the Fate deck. So does that mean there's 7 of those? Time Marches On. There's 1. I think there's just 7 total. So here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So there's another element of the game you're not going to get to see. The event cards don't happen in this game. So I have no idea what you're missing out on, but these are cards that when you draw them, they have to be played immediately, and they can surprise you, because you're not expecting them. And so there's only 7 in this big deck of cards, so they really would surprise you because you're definitely not expecting these when they come up. But they are out of this particular game. All right, so shuffle the remaining fake cards together, set aside 10 of these cards face down, then shuffle the 6 event card. Oh, I see. They're not out of the game. Let's back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so everything except for time marches on. And if you're having the Bangles Hazy Shade of Winter going on in your head right now, that's exactly what's going on in my mind because of the time marches on. Time, time, time is on my side. And then the Umbrella Academy from Netflix. That was a good show, by the way. I really enjoyed that one. It really turned the superhero thing on its head in my mind in a lot of cool ways. But yes, and I know Hazy Shade of Winter was made by somebody else before, but the Bangles version is awesome. And yes, the Hazy Shade of Winter song is great. All right, so I'm taking these 10 cards and I'm set aside 10 of these cards face down and then shuffle the 6 event cards into the remainder. Oh, come on. I wasn't supposed to shuffle them into these 10 cards. They wrote that so awful. So the whole reason, okay. So I'm supposed to keep these event cards into the main deck. So they weren't supposed to be removed at all. You just had to make sure you drew 10 cards from the deck that weren't event cards. Come on. Just say that. Draw 10 cards, make sure none of them are event cards. So if you get an event card, I mean, I guess you're not supposed to know what these 10 cards are, but geez Louise, that's a lot of work. Okay, so we have 10 cards that I drew. I don't know what those are for, but they're there. So then the 6 event cards are now being shuffled into the main deck again. It's going to be placed face down in the play area as a draw pile. Place the 10 cards that were set aside down on top of this draw pile. Okay. So the 2 Roman Empire, okay, so all they're doing, all this effort, geez Louise, was to make sure that we don't draw an event card in these top 10 cards. Oh my gosh, that was a lot of effort just to say that. Okay, so the Roman gets 2. So this is going to be west, and this is going to be east, and then this 3 for the AI number 1, and 3 for the AI number 2. All right, so in a normal player versus player, the cards are secret. You're not going to know what cards the other players have. When you're playing solitaire, everything is revealed. You're going to know what the NPC has. You're even, once you get good at the game, you're going to even memorize the priorities that they're going to use. So you're going to have an idea of what cards they're going to play. Okay. So then there's special rules, and we'll get into those as we play. So anyways, I apologize, 39 minutes, but we got set up. Setup is complete. I'm going to move some stuff around so this is more manageable, and then we'll start another video and we'll actually play the game. Thank you so much, and stay awesome.